I'm Dean Newlund, and welcome to the Business of Intuition, where I coach, facilitate, train, and speak on the hard science and meaningful experience of intuitive leadership in business, so you can make better decisions, forge real connections, and creatively solve problems to amplify your impact and simplify your life. Welcome to the Business of Intuition.
Whether you are a small startup or a medium-sized organization or a member of a team in a large organization or a Fortune 10 multinational organization, all of us have a lot of the same things in common. We want to sustain what we have, we want to grow our organizations, and we want to do so in a way that's efficient and cost-effective as possible. The problem is that we do not always know where we have unnecessary complexity, and we can't always see where we are underutilizing our resources. And those two blind spots, as well as numerous others, is often the reason why we are not meeting our goals and fulfilling on our mission. And on top of that, we got the human characteristic that might actually be preventing our growth because we're holding on to complexities because this is our domain. It represents actual bodies in seats, and we don't want to make things more efficient. We want to keep them complex because then we get to be the subject matter expert that only we know how to do what we do. My next guest on the Business of Intuition actually has a lot of great tips that I'm really excited to share with you today. She comes with a strong background in not only being an entrepreneur, but working for a large multinational company. And she's really become an expert in this area of lean process improvement. Now, typically we think of lean in manufacturing organizations that came out of the TQM movement of the 80s and the movement that actually before that came out of Japan. But nowadays, lean can actually be something that can be used in any organization, whether it be manufacturing or not, including small coaching organizations or service provider organizations. And my next guest has some really wonderful tips and tools about how we can become more efficient, how we can actually take away some of those complexities that are keeping our customer from working with us, and how we can actually make our customers more successful by utilizing the resources that we don't fully utilize. And that guest is Crista Grasso. She specializes in, and this whole focus around lean, she's been called the go-to strategic planning and systems expert for online businesses where they want to scale. She is known as the, quote, business optimizer, unquote. Crista has the ability to quickly cut through the noise and provide clarity on the core things that will make the biggest impact to scale a business simply and sustainably. She is the founder of the Lean Out Method, creator of the Lean Business Scaling System, and host of the very popular Lean Out Your Business podcast. Crista Grasso on the Business of Intuition. Crista, it's great to have you on the show, and definitely get over to Italy. We talked, those of you who just came in, we talked about her last name and where it's from, and we looked it up on a map, and we found out it's not far from Naples, and so you've made the decision, am I wrong or am I right, that you're going to actually have to get over there and find out where you're from?
You are right. This has been on the bucket list forever, but you just accelerated it.
All right. So we were talking about this whole scaling process that you've been able to perfect, and I really want to understand your insights in how smaller businesses can do just that. I'd also love to hear how some of those skills may be transferred over to more established organizations, aka the team within that organization. So tell me how you got into lean process improvement, and your story regarding that, and how that transferred into a business that is focused on lean principles to scale a company.
Yeah, absolutely. So my entrepreneurial journey is probably like many of ours, where it was a winding road, and I probably never could have quite seen myself where I am today back in the day. But fast forward, or, rewind to when I graduated from college and I was managing a Starbucks, and one of my morning customers offered me this incredible opportunity with a company. And he said, I'd love to have you start tomorrow. I think you'd be perfect for it. Only way to have you come in is if you come in as a consultant. I didn't know what a consultant was, but all I knew was I just got a job. So I said,
you were
yes,
making coffee and they gave you a job on the spot?
on the spot. Yep.
Wow.
So I could still tell you what his coffee order was too. But that being said, he had made me this great, offer. And the irony was I'd been trying to get into this company multiple times and they kept eliminating the position. So I said, yeah, absolutely, I'm in. And I started the next day as a consultant, which ended up shaping my entire career in consulting for the past 22 years. But also I ended up starting at a company that was very big into lean manufacturing. And I had not heard of lean before. I had not heard of manufacturing, really before. I graduated with a MIS degree, so it was more technology, computer related. And I got into it. And what I thought was going to be this short pit stop while I was figuring out what I really wanted to do became this thing that I absolutely loved. I found I was really good at it. I was really passionate about it. And I'm really good at seeing where people could do things in a more simple, streamlined way. It's just, you give me the hairiest, most complex situation. I'm like, oh, why don't you do this? And so lean made so much sense to me, looking at where are the efficiencies? Where is the waste in the business? Where can you take what you're doing and add more value? And so it fit me really, really well. So I had been doing this with these large companies, and I did that for about 22 years. And at the same time, I ended up creating my own business, making jewelry. So that had been another passion of mine. And I scaled that business really quickly. So outside in, everyone was looking at the business and saying, how did you do this? How did you get in all these retailers? And you're at the top shows and you're on TV and all these celebrities and influencers are wearing your jewelry. And how did you do it? And outside looking in, it looked amazing. But inside out, it was a hot mess behind the scenes. And we were really, really struggling to keep up with the demand. I was working around the clock, practically, on the verge of burnout. I ended up with an ulcer. I had all these health considerations because I really just did nothing but work to try to keep up with it. And I had this moment where I really had to make the decision, could I keep going with the business or did I need to close it? Because I couldn't keep going at the rate that I was at and the level of debt that we were accumulating, and there were no more hours in the day. And it was hitting that kind of pivot point that made me pause and say, why all these businesses that I'm consulting with, are they getting these amazing results? And then in my own business, I'm struggling so much. And I realized I wasn't applying any of the lean principles or practices in my own business. So that ended up being the birth of the lean out method. Was I just had this disconnect thinking it's these big Fortune 50 companies. I have this little tiny business. They don't apply. It's something different. But when I took the time to look at, no, if they work for their business, they can work for any business. How do I make them work for me? And I really pivoted it into a smaller business model. That made all of the difference. And my business is still going and thriving today.
So let's go back to the beginning of this. I'm very anxious to get into this more, but I wanted just to make sure that we're all on the same page, because some people may be listening to this and go, what is lean? So I would love it if you could give a sort of, a Wikipedia definition. I've done some work. I'm not a lean expert by any stretch of the imagination, but I've always associated it primarily in manufacturing, where you're trying to create these efficiencies. I've seen it also, like we did some work with Discount Tire, and they created a full lean process. I haven't heard it in terms of service organizations, but give us a kind of a rundown on what lean is. And then let's get into then how you've used it and helped others apply those principles.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to make lean super simple. It's about maximizing value while minimizing waste. And if you think about a physical product, if you think about a manufacturing line, right, you're always looking at where can you minimize waste, because the longer something takes, the more defects or issues or things that it is impacts your bottom line. But I think if you think of any business, I don't care what kind of business you have, you always want to maximize value for your customer and you want to minimize waste. And when I think you look at more of a service-oriented business or coaching consulting type business, which is a lot of the businesses that I work with, there is a ton of waste in what we do, from unnecessary complexity to underutilized resources to just so many things that we could dive into. And at the same time, the more we could minimize that, the more we could provide value to our clients. So in its most basic definition, that's what lean is. And I think that every single business, no matter how big or small or what industry they're in, can really benefit from that concept.
All right. So now you got me at hello. This is getting me interested more and more as I hear you talk. So how do we then know where there is waste? Because I have a sense that people just can't even see it. They get into the habit of what they do. They do it the way they've always done it. And it seems to be the way we should do it. How do we know where there's waste?
Yeah, I actually ended up developing a guide that I put together after, spending 20 something years consulting with businesses. And in the manufacturing space, there's areas of waste that have been identified. In software development, there's areas of waste that have been identified. But I looked at what about for a primarily online business, a coaching and consulting, a service-based business? What are their unique areas of waste that are different from some of these others? And every business has them. And if I go through just really quickly the list of a few of them, I think you will resonate. But the first, which I mentioned already, is unnecessary complexity, right? If you think about all of the things that happen in your business, most of us have unnecessary complexity. If you think about, I'd mentioned underutilized resources. Are you using all of the features of all of the tools that you have? Are you paying for multiple tools that do the same exact thing? Are your team members aligned to the right activities and the things that they do the best and they do naturally, really efficiently and effectively and enjoy? Or do you have people wearing a ton of hats, including a whole bunch of stuff that maybe they don't really like or aren't all that good at?
Okay, so let's go back to this first one. Unnecessary complexity is what you said. All right, let's just take a scenario. Let's put this into life. We'll start small. Got an individual consulting or coaching service business, right? It's not even online, right? There's a lot of coaches out there, some of which are listening in right now. And they're probably wondering, well, where are there unnecessary complexities in my business? Could you give us some examples based on the work that you've done before?
Oh, yeah. 100. I mean, there's so much unnecessary complexity in a business. So one example I will give you for all of you who have an online business, when you look at your end-to-end marketing and sales funnel, how many steps do people need to go through to actually buy from you? And for anybody who's gone through the whole, you've got to have this tiny offer, and then you've got to move to this offer, and then you've got to have a tripwire, and when you're on the up, you got to then upsell off the tripwire, and it's just so complicated when usually people just want to hire you. And so one of the first places I look with businesses is how easy is it for a new customer to be able to hire you? And when you look at that funnel of how people get into the various services or offers that you have in your business, how simple is it for them to get into it? And often there's a lot of unnecessary complexity and just extra steps inherent in that process. So that's one I see really common with anybody who's in the digital space. And I think it's because people are often told you've got to upsell and you've got to have these tripwires and you've got to have this multi-step funnel. And it can work for some industries, but for most of my clients, people just want something really simple and you don't need all that. You're actually elongating the buying experience.
So I'm thinking about experiences I have all the time. I'm calling up a company and I want to buy something on the phone. Could even be a restaurant, just to be able to make a reservation, or I'm trying to book a flight or whatever, right? And there's this whole pattern of please press 1 for this, press 2 for this. And by the time you finally get to the end of this, you're now 8 or 9 clicks into it and you still haven't talked to a human being. Maybe that's all you really want to do. Yep. One could say on a large organization like a Delta or American or whatever, they need to be able to do that. So they route you to the right person. Is that, however, an example of unnecessary complexity?
Yeah, it's both an example of unnecessary complexity, but it's also an example of not being super customer centric and not being very lean in the sense that you're not focused on value for the customer. You're focused on value for the company. You're focused on, I want to get this data from this person and I want them to click all these buttons and do all these things so that I could gather all this data. It's very company value focused. It's not very customer value focused. So when you think about customer value, one of the unique places that we're at right now, I think just in the evolution of business, is people who want to scale want to be able to have things be more automated, but people who offer a more boutique service or a high ticket service want things to feel very personal. And so it's that delicate balance.
One or the other. Which one do we get? And can we have both? Can we have a high touch and a high tech? I mean, can we make it simple to work with us, but also we feel a sense of personalization?
Completely. And I think you can. And one of my clients I've been working with, and they, after a live event where they're trying to enroll people into their membership, will literally call every single person who registered And I was like, do you know how much time that takes, how much resource that takes, how much complexity and management and overhead that takes? So we did some research and we ended up finding this tool where the person who facilitates it can record a message that says, thank you so much for attending. I'd like to extend a personal invitation for you. And it's something that they record after each session so they could make it super relevant for the session, but it automatically goes into someone's voicemail. And so they recorded it once, somebody hit send on it. Instead of calling 100 or 300 people, those 100 or 300 people have this very personalized sounding voicemail in their inbox instantly that was about the event they actually attended. It's not something generic. And I think that's an example of bridging that gap where you are being lean, you're being very customer centric and thinking about value, but you're also looking at how can I do something in a way that's scalable.
Right. So let's just assume that the customer centricity is what we're focused on. What other ways can we even find out that we have some unnecessary complexity? Again, what you mentioned makes sense, but I'm going like, all right, what else? How do I know? I mean, I don't even have the awareness. I'm too close to it, right? It's
completely. Okay.
Yeah.
If you have a team, ask your team, and they are going to tell you all of the ways that you have unnecessary complexity because there's probably a lot of it.
Right. Because they're dealing with it. Yes.
They're completely dealing with it. But, obviously when you move beyond now, maybe somebody's already joined your program. They're already working with you. How do they book calls with you? How do they actually schedule the service? How do they receive the service? What does that look like? If you just think purely about customer journey for a moment here, and you think about the number of steps that somebody has to take to achieve the result or the transformation that they want to through the work that they're doing with you, how can you do that in the simplest way possible, not only from a customer-facing perspective, but how in the back end of the business, when you look at your team, can they do it in the fewest number of steps possible in the most, highly repeated way possible where you have consistent, predictable results? And a lot of times, if you ask your team, what you'll find is somebody sends in an email and they ask a question and they're pinging 3 people on Slack to try to figure out how to answer. They're like, I know there's a script for this. I think at some point we emailed, what was that woman's name who we emailed where we have an email that I could use as a template to send back to her. And there's just all this time without really clear systems, without really clear processes, without a really simple kind of looking at that customer experience way where people are just really complex, pinging, looking at, is it in this tool? Is it in that tool? Oh, I've got to go to this tool for this. I've got to go to that tool for that. Where is it? And people are asking one another things. And if you ask your team, they will absolutely highlight some of those areas of unnecessary complexity for you.
All right. So here's the question. This is so granular. Email or phone call?
Should you do email or phone call?
Because phone call could be like, hey, this is short, to the point. It's non-complex. It's also high touch. I might get, a gatekeeper. I might not get the person. They may be out. Email, they will eventually get it. I mean, people, I'm sure, struggle with that all the time.
Yeah, I'll give you the classic consultant answer. It depends. And I think it totally depends on your business. If you are going for high volume, then obviously email because you can't make that many phone calls.
Right.
But if you're going for high touch and you have that more boutique, high level experience, and you're only trying to get a couple clients, take the time to make the phone call because the more personal touch that you're going to get, the higher the conversion is going to be. But you also have to be practical about what you can realistically do.
All right. So here's another granular one based on this connection with clients. We've got all sorts of software out there that can allow people to book meetings based on a person's calendar. Acuity, for example, is one that we use for this podcast, for example. You and I connected through that, right? You or somebody on your team filled out the form and got on my calendar. So here we are. It worked, right? Would you recommend a consulting company continue that process because it's easy, or would you recommend somebody, give you a call and figure it out on the spot?
I am a big fan of technology first, personalized support by kind of exception or by VIP client. And so what I mean by that is we all know in the clients that we take, if I can on my own, go look at your schedule, find a 30-minute slot, book it, and we can show up here, then why not do it that way? But if I was like your be-all, end-all guest, I've been on your dream board forever, and you could not wait to get me on the podcast, and you knew that my availability was super limited, at that point, I think somebody from your team would call and say, hey, we're so excited. We'd love to have you on this. Can we just find a time together where this would work? And I think it really depends. You're going to do that by exception or by VIP. Like, this is like the person I want, and I'm going to do whatever I can to get them on. But if it's just more general, then of course, give someone that option, because I think it's honestly simpler for the other person as well sometimes.
Understood. So you mentioned these two things about underutilized resources as well as unnecessary complexity. Let's talk about how these sort of mindsets and practices can transfer out of, say, a small business that has maybe a limited number of employees to a team that might be a part of a larger organization. One, can these still apply in that other world? And two, aside from asking your team if you would say yes, where do we have unnecessary complexity and underutilized resources, and let them come to you? What other things can those team leaders within organizations do to uncover those opportunities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think honestly, one of the things that I've done for many, many years in companies is I've gone in and done a waste assessment. I offer them now to anybody who wants a waste assessment. I have a free one on my site or a paid one where we'll actually work together and uncover those wastes.
Yeah.
So I think you can find and look for them yourself. And there are certainly some questions you can ask yourself that I'll go through. But I think for not a big investment, you can also find somebody who is trained and skilled at identifying those things and who can ask the right leading questions to pull out of you the things that you don't necessarily think of or know. And when I would consult with these really big clients, because I've worked with everyone from Fortune 500 to Fortune 10 clients, my last client was a big Fortune 10 client, I actually train their internal leaders to look for and continuously minimize waste in the organization. Yeah. So I think that's part of a leader's role. If you think about it, is you want to be efficient. If you're efficient, you're being more profitable. If you're efficient, you are getting more from, the resources that you have. And so I think it is an accountability and a responsibility that every leader, regardless of the size and scale, but certainly those who have a team, should really be thinking about and focused on.
Got it. So give us a story of a success, a company or small or large, where here's where they were, here's where they ended, and how do they get from point A to point B?
Yeah, I'll give you an example of a company that I'm currently working with now. And she brought me in to do a waste assessment, and we looked through it, and she was actually a little bit unique. Most people, when it comes to waste, they really struggle with organization. They struggle with meeting practices. They've got all of these complex meetings, complex planning practices that really don't fit a small business, which she has. And they usually struggle to get new leads in. She actually was the opposite. She was good in all of those areas, which was really quite interesting. But where she struggled was with the client delivery side and having insight into where her different projects were. And what she found was she ended up with more of a feast and famine cycle in her work, where she would have all this work piled up, but because she didn't know how much work she could handle at once, or because she didn't have good insight into things, they would end up wasting a ton of time. They would end up having client deliverables where they would think things would happen, but then clients wouldn't get stuff back to them for so long that they would either have these periods of lull where there was all this wasted, extra effort, or they would just have everything at once and they couldn't take on new clients. So what we're doing with her is we went through, we assessed it, we gave her 10 different things that we recommended that she focused on, both short-term and long-term, to clean that up. But one of the things that we're doing is we're putting in place an actual PM system for her so that she has visibility, and we mapped out her entire...
So for those who are, you're talking project management, sorry.
Yes.
Just want to make sure that people understand the term. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, we're doing a project management system, but it's beyond projects. It's about her client deliverables as well. And we went through and mapped out her custom workflow. What does happen? What are those stick points? Where do you have waste? Where do things get stuck in the process because you're waiting on the client? How many things can you do in a certain stage at once so that you know how much client work you can commit to, and how can you stagger client projects in commitments so that you can actually fully optimize how much revenue you can generate in the business in the time of your team so they're not working really hard or have these big lulls. And so that's some of what we're in the middle of doing for her right now, is building all that out. And that's going to not only give her team back a lot more time, things are going to be a lot simpler, a lot cleaner, a lot less complex, but I think her clients are also going to have a much better client experience because she's going to be able to explain to them what it looks like when they need to get things back to her. Instead of just send us this, we'll get started when we get it. It's, hey, we need to receive this by Friday if your project is going to continue. If we don't get it by then we're going to actually have a 3-week delay because we have other clients in the queue. And there's nice ways to say that, but I think when you can clearly know your process, explain your process, it simplifies everything and removes a lot of that waste and complexity in the business.
Heading into the psychobabble side of this, I remember once thinking, and I may have posted this somewhere and somebody responded to it and said, hey, that's kind of provocative, was the idea that complexity is a form of avoidance. What do you think about that idea? Do we create things? Brilliant. Do we create complexity because why do we do this to ourselves? Is kind of where I'm getting at. I mean, why is not the shortest distance between two places the best way to go? Why do we create all this other junk around it that just stresses us out and prevents our success? What is that about? I mean, from an emotional, psychological perspective, what have you thought about regarding that?
Yeah, because I think none of us go in and start our day saying, let me see if I can make things as complex as possible today, right?
Right.
That's never the intent, but the nature of growth, right? Complexity is a side effect of growth. It's kind of a good sign in a way if you've got complexity. It's a bad sign if you keep complexity, because as things grow, you're adding more, you're doing more. If you're not very systematized, if you don't have really great strategy and planning and systems and team in place, which most people don't start with that day one, it's something that you evolve and add and kind of scale out as your business grows, then you end up with more complexity. And where I think people keep that complexity is it gets really, really hard to say no to things that you already have. And it gets really, really hard to create the space to simplify things and to lean things out, because you're so busy and you're so in the weeds of things that I think it's just a byproduct of the way that a lot of people work and the nature of things get more complicated as you grow. As you keep adding, you're not subtracting. And if you're not subtracting, by nature, things get more complex. You've got to commit to actually say no to things. You've got to commit to let things go. And I think that's hard for people.
There's two thoughts on this. One was I heard this phrase or I heard this model somewhere that on one hand, you have innovation, which is sort of like if you can imagine a PowerPoint and you've got this arrow going up and that's innovation. But they thought it's also important because innovation is often a side of growth and adding on to something. You're bringing new products, ideas, into your process. But they also were encouraging what they were calling exovation, which is to reduce and to eliminate and to let go of old processes that are no longer serving you, the complexities that are now getting in the way. So I'm almost sensing that, you would go through a team, whether they be a part of a large organization or whether you're a small company, to have almost scheduled spring cleaning sessions where you would work with your team to find out where are we actually having unnecessary complexity and where we're not fully utilizing our resources, and have a facilitated conversation just on those two things. Is that some of the stuff that you would recommend?
Yeah, I actually call it the spring lean out and the fall lean out.
Oh, really?
So you were right on.
I wasn't trying to, steal your thunder here. It just so happened that it came to my mind as you were talking.
I think the reality is we all know, right? Time gets away from us if we don't actually have something scheduled. And I think if you can tie it to the season, do you have to do it in spring and fall? No.
Yeah.
We think of cleaning in the spring, and fall is typically when we're just coming back after the summer break and we're kind of getting in the swing of things and we want a really strong finish to the year. So I kind of like bookending with spring and fall. But that being said, I think there's things that you can do in your business all the time. And there's a technique that I developed called Chuck that I recommend every single one of my clients actually does every 30 days in their business.
Oh, really? Okay. What is
really
it? Yeah.
Simple. Cut, hold, change, keep. Before you commit to doing anything new in your business, as you're getting ready to do your 90-day planning, as you're getting ready to do your monthly planning, you should take the different things that you do, the different activities that you have, even your offers. If you look at your offers and your services and the things that you're selling, if you look at the components of those, and I think you just want to run them through. Am I getting a good return on investment for this? And this could be time, money, energy. Like, is it worth the effort that we're putting in? Or are we getting enough back? When you think of alignment, is it aligned with where we want to go next in the business? Is this something legacy that we're hanging on to because we always had it, but it really isn't going to take us where we want to go? Or is it in alignment? Fulfillment, does it still make sense? Is it something you're passionate about and you want to keep doing? An investment, is it something that maybe is going to pay off in the future? You're putting the time in now, like building relationships and networking and things like that. And so you want to look through those 4 lenses at all of the different things that you do and categorize them as cut, hold, change, and keep. Keep, it's working great. It's directionally aligned. You'll love it. Everything is good. You don't even have to make changes to it right now. You're going to keep on doing it. Change is, we see the value in this. Maybe it's working okay right now, but we see that with some optimization or with some change, we could get way better results from this. And then cut is not in alignment, doesn't make sense anymore. And hold is, maybe it makes sense, not sure, but it's not the most important thing to focus on right now. And I think if you
you don't change that at all. Hold, there's nothing new.
And I'll tell you what happens with most people. A lot of what goes in the hold list is technically the stuff that should go in the cut list, but people are really reluctant to commit to cut things. So they stick it in the hold list thinking that they'll get back to it, but then they eventually never get back to it. So it gets cut.
Yeah, because when you get into a team situation, you start thinking like the stuff that could be cut could be things that I have ownership over, or that I have ego around, or that I have people and FTEs associated with, or I got a failing program and maybe we should let it go, but that means we have to let some people go as well. I mean, those are tough conversations. And so I'm assuming that this process is not just a straight, narrow, just go and do it. You're talking about change management. You're talking about leadership. You're talking about team dynamics. You're talking about culture, that this inspires sometimes some pretty tough conversations.
Oh, completely and entirely. And you could say to people all day long, because I've done this in a lot of big organizations, listen, objectively, let's look at what's happening, what makes sense to continue, what makes sense not to. This doesn't impact roles. This doesn't impact anything, right? We'll look at what the most important things are and we'll shift our focuses as we need to. And I think that's really easy to do in a small business, but in a big business, that becomes really scary because people are like, yeah, external consultant, we've heard it all before and we've all lost our jobs, right?
Right.
And so it does get scary for people when you say, listen, let's just look at what makes sense for the business. And then we're going to figure out how to kind of reimagine where we put our focus. And I've successfully done that in so many companies where we have not had to lose people. We have been able to reimagine what people are focused on. People actually end up liking what they do a lot more, but it doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes some people do need to go. Sometimes you do need to lose a division, and people know that. And so I think people are really reluctant at times, the bigger the organization, especially, to be really honest and look at it from a company perspective and what's best for the company and take out the personal perspective in what's best for me as the worker, the employee, or the manager of that team.
Great stuff, Crista. I really am fascinated by this, and I think you're really onto something. And as you said, there's a logical sort of straightforward approach that would make sense for anybody. But as you start getting into it, now we start getting into all the human side. And I got to protect my people and I got to protect my turf. And how do we then, maybe I'm making things complex intentionally, because if you don't understand it, then I can keep being the owner of it, all of those dynamics. So I see you're not just about efficiency, you're about change management. You're about team development. You're about culture. It just so happens that your venue is coming through the work that you're doing. This is great. I really am a fan. You've given me some great ideas. How can people learn more about you, the work that you're doing? I know tell us about your online free survey. Just how can we connect to you?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to actually dig deeper into all 10 areas of waste, I know we talked really high level about 2 today. It's pretty simple. You can find me at leanoutmethod.com, and that guide is leanoutmethod.com/waste. Completely free, walks you through, gives you examples, and lets you assess yourself on a scale of 1 to 10, where you're at either in your business or department, whatever that looks like. And then otherwise, my podcast is Lean Out Your Business Podcast, and I talk about a whole lot of stuff like we talked about on the show today.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. And don't forget, you got to get to Italy.
I am going. Thank you so much for having me.
You bet.
Thank you for listening to The Business of Intuition. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe, rate, and review on Apple Podcasts, Google, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to learn more about Dean or Mission Facilitators Leadership, go to mfileadership.com. That's mfileadership.com.